Hey guys, it is just about time for our daily Facebook Live for #ZooOpenOnline. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to get in here with us. Once you're in, let us know that you're here and let us know that you can hear us. We're going to try and combat any sound issues that we may have. And once everybody gets in, then we will do our few announcements and get started with today's live feed. Hi Leanne, thanks for letting us know you can hear us. Welcome to our live feed. Hi to the Wolves. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we're growing our audience here, so as we said, we'll give you guys a few minutes. We're going to try and go live right at about 10:30. Hi to Stacy in Pittsburgh. Hi Dominic. Hi Stella. Good morning, Mandy. Thanks, Alejandro. We're pretty biased, but we think we're one of the best zoos, too. Hello out in Vegas. Hi to Jackson in Columbus. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Good morning, Andrea in Monroe. Hi, Tommy. Hi, Luke. Hi, Abby in Perrysburg. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a few announcements for you this morning. Our first one is thank you all so much for all the tips and suggestions that you've been sending us. One of them was to include a donate button during our Facebook Live, so we now have that up there for you. So if you are able and are enjoying these, please click on that link and make a donation to help sustain the zoo during this closure time. We appreciate it very, very much. In that same light, we also have a Facebook fundraiser going on. You may donate there, or you can go to toledozoo.org/donate, and you can check out all the ways that you can help your zoo during this difficult time. Our next thing is we wanted to remind you that we are now going to be offering distance learning education classes. Our education department will be coming to you via Zoom, and you can sign up for an actual classroom lesson complete with worksheets and live feed and everything. Go to toledozoo.org, scroll partway down the page to educational opportunities, and you can check those out. They start this Thursday, and we have several different dates going on with different themes. Also, another way you can stay connected with your zoo during this time, we are offering meals on the go. Our catering department and executive chef have created home-cooked meals this week. They're doing enchiladas and pasta. You can go to toledozoo.org to place your order and pay, and then you can drive to our Broadway entrance, and we have curbside service. We'll bring it right out to you. We're doing meals for the family, so you can buy individual ones or for the entire family. Check it out at toledozoo.org. We have redone our entire homepage there to give you all the ways that we can stay connected during this time of the closure. As we learned from the governor, we have a stay-at-home order through April 6th, and we had originally said the zoo was going to be closed through April 1st. Obviously, that has been extended, and we will be closed until further notice. We will keep you guys posted, though, but in the meantime, sign up for those education classes, get those orders for meals on the go in, and keep tuning in to these Facebook Lives. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to do a few more shout outs here. Hi, Calvin. Hi, Mila. Hi, Roan. Good to see you guys this morning. Hi, Carter, Evan, Tara, Macy, Maggie, Kenny and Cadence, Adeline and Avery, Felix, Trenton. Hi guys, welcome everybody, and we're going to turn it over now to Jake from our conservation department, and he's going to tell us what we're doing here surrounded by all this beautiful green.
That's right. So this morning we're here in the new native plant production facility here at the zoo, and we're really excited about this new addition to our Wild Toledo program. So for the past few years we've been growing and selling native plants to get them out into backyards all around the greater Toledo area, and this is actually the first time where we have been able to build a heated greenhouse, which just allows us to head start all of our plants and get them up to a nice flowering size even as soon as by Mother's Day, which is right around the first time when people would be considering planting outside. Typically you want to wait till the threat of the last frost passes, which is usually mid-May. And so by starting these seeds a few months back and allowing them to grow in a heated environment, we get them quite a lot larger than we would if we were strictly growing them outdoors like we have in years past. Also, of course, we have a lot more space to work with, so we've been able to expand our species offerings. This year we actually have over 100 species of native wildflowers, grasses, trees, shrubs, all germinated and growing in the greenhouse currently, and we're excited to continue expanding that as time goes on.
And so we are here in this greenhouse that, as Jake said, our conservation department actually built. And as you guys can see, there are 5 long rows filled with plants. How many are here, Jake?
So this greenhouse will actually hold about 7,200 of these 3 1/4 inch pots. And as I was saying, we have currently over about 100 species. Depending on some straggling seeds, we may get as close to 140 different species of wildflowers available for sale this year.
And as he said, these are going to be available for sale. The plan originally was to have you guys be able to come in and shop in this new greenhouse. Obviously, with the stay-at-home order, we had to come up with a different plan. So as of Friday, we're going to start taking pre-sales on our website, which is
wildtoledo.org, and we'll also link it on the Toledo Zoo main page in the conservation tab.
So you guys can check these all out with the kids at home. This would be a great science project. You could pick up one of these, watch it grow. As he said, these are native plants, and so once you raise it up a little bit bigger, you could plant it outside. And what are some of the benefits that these native plants give to our gardens, Jake?
Well, there's quite a few. Probably the most popular one would be the benefit to the wildlife in your own backyard. So a major one that a lot of people are familiar with is the need for nectar plants for pollinators, as well as host plants for species like the monarch butterfly, which caterpillar only eats milkweed. And in this greenhouse currently we actually have 7 different species of milkweed, all native to Ohio. Most people are familiar with the common milkweed that grows roadside or in ditches, but there's actually a dozen or so species native in the state, and a lot of them are really quite showy and actually fit in really well even in more of a formal type garden. So they serve as host plants for species like various butterflies. They provide nectar and pollen for bees, hummingbirds, you name it. In the fall, when the plants go into seed, all of the seed pods will actually provide a major food source for migrating and overwintering birds. The finches always seem to love our purple coneflower seed heads, and of course this all ties in as well to helping clean up the water. Native plants have really deep root systems that help to lock up the soil, so they can prevent erosion, especially when planted along streams and rivers. And they also lock up a lot of nutrients before they have a chance to make it to the river and then to the lake. So we can actually even combat the algal bloom problems that Toledo's so familiar with.
Those are all amazing things, and as we said, this would make a great science project. And we're getting quite a few questions here, so I'm going to start firing them at you here, Jake.
Sure.
Lane wants to know, do plants grow in Antarctica?
There are some algae and whatnot, but no, there's not a whole lot of plant growth similar to what you guys would be accustomed to here. But yeah, there's certain things, going on mostly under the water, but no, nothing like we're accustomed to here in Toledo.
Very good. And Sherry wants to know, how big do these plants get?
So there's a wide variety of species and an accordingly wide variety of sizes. We do have some species as short as maybe 6 inches or so that would even act as a nice ground cover, all the way up to let's say our prairie dock, which can get in excess of 10 feet tall. It's a great big sunflower, and there's everything in between. An interesting feature and tool on the wildtoledo.org website, where we have these listed for sale, is you can actually sort by plant height, bloom color, bloom time, water requirements, sun requirements, etc. So you guys can really just filter through and find the perfect plant for that area that you have in mind.
We're trying to make this as easy as possible for you guys. Roan wants to know, can you eat some of the leaves of these plants?
There are some edible native plants. One that comes to mind that we actually have back here in the corner, I can maybe show Corey here, is wild leek, which is a type of onion. And we got a couple of them here. These are pretty slow growing, or at least they're slow to establish. So we're certainly not eating them here. But over time, if you had a patch in the backyard that got sizable enough, you certainly could harvest to some degree.
Well, we don't eat a lot of these. As you were saying, monarchs eat an awful lot. Talk to us about the ones that you're growing for them to eat.
Exactly, yeah. So here at the zoo, another part of the conservation department is our monarch rearing and release program, where we'll release around 1,000 monarchs every year, and we'll do that on grounds as well as outreach events in the community. And so right next door to this greenhouse is actually our monarch rearing facility, and here you can see our little swamp milkweeds that are destined to be 4 or 5 foot tall plants that will be just covered in monarch caterpillars here in just a few short months. But you can see the seed flats here. So this is actually where we start all of our milkweeds from, in seed directly in these tiny little cells. And we'll grow them out to about this size, and then they'll get potted up into a larger pot. And then they'll go over to the monarch greenhouse, and over the next few months they'll actually hit the ceiling and be 4, 5, 6 feet tall. And as I mentioned earlier, the milkweeds is the only plant that monarchs are able to eat. And we like to grow the swamp milkweed because it's a lot quicker growing than most milkweeds, and also it seems most palatable to the monarch caterpillars. So they will eat any species of milkweed, but they seem to have a preference for the more tender leaves of the swamp milkweed.
Very nice. And Drake wants to know, how do you pollinate plants in a greenhouse?
So these plants, we actually, the orchid over in the corner, which maybe we can pan back to, is a good example. So that's one that we'll actually pollinate by hand with either a Q-tip or sometimes a toothpick, depending on the species. But that's a great question, and it's actually kind of a funny answer, but essentially we're pretending to be an insect. And we replicate that, whether it's with the tip of a toothpick or a Q-tip or a finger. I will say that there's actually not not too many plants in here that we have to pollinate by hand, because as the seasons go on, we will actually open this greenhouse up. The sides will roll up, and a lot of these plants will even get moved onto outdoor benches, and so they'll be entirely accessible by the local pollinators.
And that leads right into Caleb's question. Other than hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies, are there any other pollinators?
Yeah, there sure are. There's even some fly species, even mice sometimes, which is kind of one that not many people think about. Bats are another big one, at least in some areas. Trying to think here. The list just goes on and on.
There are lots of types of bees and butterflies and hummingbirds
exactly,
that you mentioned too. So very cool. And Sherry, yes, these are for sale. We are opening the website on Friday for pre-sales, wildtoledo.org. You can check that out. And yes, Chris, there is a whole list of all the plants for sale on that website. Sophia wants to know, how much water do you give a plant this size?
So that will also depend on the exact species. We kind of have them divided here by their kind of general water requirements. So certain plants like swamp milkweed, as you might guess from the name, tend to like it a little bit more on the wet side. So those will get watered every single day. But we do have other plants such as the cacti, which maybe Corey can zoom in on over here, as well as the wild blue lupin, common milkweed, some of the various dune grasses. So a lot of these species are actually found out in oak openings in the oak savanna, and some of them will even grow right in a pure yellow sand dune, such as the prickly pear cactus here. And so these ones are a lot less demanding in their water requirements. So these ones will actually only get watered maybe once or twice a week, depending on the temperature.
And yes, guys, as he said, that is a cactus that you're looking at, and we do have some of those native here to Ohio, so that's pretty cool.
That's right. Not many people are aware that we do have a native cactus. Most people always, of course, think the desert Southwest, but right here in oak openings, there's some fairly large colonies of prickly pear cactus. And it's actually a pretty easy plant to grow even in your backyard. It develops a really interesting fruit pod, and that's actually another edible species that I could have grouped in earlier when we were mentioning that.
And Brindley wants to know, are some plants poisonous?
There are some toxic plants. We do not grow any on hand, but again, these are mostly for wildlife, so I certainly wouldn't consider them as any sort of culinary benefit as far as people or pets are concerned. But of course, all the wildlife in the area is evolved with all of these species over countless years, so there's certainly no issues there. Quite the contrary.
Evan wants to know, what plants bloom at night?
So there's definitely a lot of night blooming species. A lot of them that come to mind are actually some of the tropical plants, which you can check out in the Tropical Conservatory. I am not aware of any of our current selection that's actually night blooming though.
All right, and Kaylee wants to know if you know how many species of plants there are in the world.
In the world? I would be afraid to even take a stab at it.
I bet there are millions.
Millions.
All right. And Trenton and Ashlyn want to know if the zoo grows any food for the animals. You mentioned the monarchs. Any others?
Yeah, so on grounds, as part of the Browse program, the Toledo Zoo is growing species like bamboo, or mulberry, and a variety of others. We also have the vegetable garden that's maintained by horticulture. So there is a wide variety of plants that are grown here on grounds that help feed the animals.
And Milo wants to know how to attract hummingbirds. What kind of plants do they like, Jake?
So hummingbirds are especially attracted to red flowers. So possibly the best plant that you could plant to attract hummingbirds would be cardinal flower. It's bright red flower spike with lots of different flowers on it, and it's absolutely loaded with nectar. Another good one is bee balm or dotted horse mint. They're both in the mint family, and again they have kind of purplish pink blooms that generally are especially good at attracting birds. Another great one is actually the swamp milkweed, which we were talking about earlier for the monarch butterflies, but that is also frequented by the hummingbirds.
Very nice. And we just got a text from Ryan Walsh, our conservation coordinator, who couldn't join us here today, but he tells us there are 20,000 plant species known in the world right now. So we were a little overzealous with our millions guesses, but thanks, Ryan, for giving us that information. And Felix wants to know, when do we start planting all of this, Jake?
So with the native species, the seeds require a cold dormancy period in order to trigger them to germinate. So most of our native plants will actually go to seed and produce seed heads in fall, and then the seeds will remain dormant through the winter, because of course if they were to sprout when it was snowing outside, they wouldn't fare too well. So they actually have built-in mechanisms to prevent them from sprouting early, and it actually requires a period of time with cold and wet climate to break down the seed coat and allow them to germinate. So these seeds are all sown around December, and we keep them ice cold for about 2 months, and then we'll gradually heat the greenhouse up beginning in February, and eventually we'll hit about 65 degrees, which is where we're currently sitting, and the plants really seem to thrive. Basically, we're just replicating kind of ideal spring growing conditions.
Very nice. And Ryan admitted he sent us a typo, guys. It is 200,000 types of plants.
A little closer to that million.
We're getting there. We're getting there. And Sherry, yes, our webpage isn't available quite yet. It will be opening on Friday. So you'll be able to see the plant list and start taking pre-orders at that point. Juliana wants to know, what's the smallest plant we sell?
Oh, let's see. The prickly pear would be a good one. Those cactus pads that you saw earlier is about as high as that plant will actually grow. Trying to think here. Here we have some Virginia bluebells, and these are maybe 6 to 8 inches tall. So it's another shorter one. Let's see here. Some of our grasses are particularly short.
Okay. And Ella, he just said the temperature in here is about 65 degrees right now. I'll be honest, it's kind of nice considering it's only about high 30s outside, so we're enjoying about 65 degrees in here right now. Let's see. Crosby wants to know, what's the rarest plant we have?
The rarest plant, I would say a good contender would be the lady slipper orchid that we were at earlier, and I think Corey will go pan back to that for you. So that's a particularly rare one. There's a few more in the back corner that are also pretty sought after. So this is the small pink lady slipper. And not many people are aware that Ohio has native orchids, but we actually have 30 plus species of native orchids, and we do have a handful of them here in the collection. These will not be available this year, but we are working at building up our stock of them. These ones, Dr. Walsh has actually worked with tissue culturing and actually growing them in the lab where you can optimize their growth and produce a lot higher quantities of them with a lot less trouble. And so that's something that we're excited to get into a little bit more in the future. But for now, we're growing these out for our own seed collection, And some of these will actually form colonies like this rattlesnake plantain orchid. So this is the mother plant that actually was planted 2 years ago, and it was the only one at the time, but over time it's actually set out all these little pups. So eventually we'll be able to divide these up and offer a few for sale as well.
And Katie wants to know, what's your favorite plant?
I am pretty biased towards the orchids. I know I've mentioned it about 10 times already, but this slipper orchid probably takes the cake for me. But there's all sorts of great natives that it's really hard to narrow down, to be honest.
And Nathan wants to know, how many plants are in the zoo?
In the zoo, that is not something I can rattle off the top of my head. I can tell you that we're excited to continue growing the collection over time, and be able to display these to the public, especially some of the more rare varieties like the orchids and whatnot. Speaking of which, a really cool exhibit that I'd recommend checking out is in the new Promedica Museum of Natural History. We have the Prairie Conservatory, and in the far back corner there's a bog replicate with some of the native carnivorous plants. So we actually have pitcher plants and sundews, and there's also a lot of really interesting bog orchids that are in there. So that's another kind of hot spot for some of the more interesting plant diversity here at the zoo.
And we're getting a few questions about carnivorous plants, specifically the Venus flytrap. Somebody would like to know, Crosby would like to know, how does a Venus flytrap work? How is it attractive to a bug?
So, of course, they're going to be targeting mostly flies, and if you can picture the trap wide open and they have the big red petals, and they'll actually bring them in with a sweet smell, and they'll think that they're going to be scoring their next meal, but they'll actually be walking around in the pitcher or in the fly trap, and they'll hit some sensing hairs, and if they hit enough of them in a short enough time span, it'll actually trigger the plant to shut, and it'll digest the fly that way. I will say that the Venus flytraps are actually native to the Carolinas. We don't actually have any native flytraps here in Ohio. But in Ohio, we have the pitcher plant, Sarracenia, and we also have a few species of sundew, which actually have really cool leaves with a lot of sticky substance coating it, and so the insects will actually land and get stuck, and the leaves will kind of curl up on them. So that's another interesting native carnivorous plant. We have some aquatic species as well, called bladderworts, that'll actually suck aquatic insect larvae into little chambers in the plants that are kind of interesting. Speaking of carnivorous plants, this year we're excited to start producing a few of the native varieties of carnivorous species, as well as some of the native bog species, and we should be able to offer those for sale in the future.
Very cool. And Mary, we're working out exactly how you're going to get your orders. As we said, our goal was to have you guys be able to come in here and shop, but what we're working on right now is a drive-through pickup. We'll announce dates when that is available, and we'll also be doing some curbside pickup, and they're even working out some delivery days throughout the area. Crystal would like to know, are there any good plants for window boxes in here?
Yeah, so most of the natives, I will say, are most comfortable in the ground. Of course, this is, the climate that they're used to, where they've grown in the ground for, thousands, millions of years. However, we have had luck on grounds in some of the raised planter boxes growing dune species. The raised planters tend to dry out really quickly, so a lot of times they're a little trickier to grow some of the more moisture-loving plants. However, the prickly pear or dotted horsemint or upland white goldenrod, wild blue lupin, butterfly milkweed are all good examples of native dune species that would actually do quite well in a raised planter.
Very cool. And Ashlyn wants to know, what is the price range for plants? She's planting the garden.
Oh, great. So the 3 1/4 inch pots start at $7 and will vary depending on rarity and difficulty of production. But we are excited this year to also offer some different discount packages as well. So we're throwing together a few different options, such as a Monarch bundle, which will supply you with a few species of milkweed to attract them and provide food for the caterpillars, as well as some nectar plants to provide food for the migrating adults. I can actually lead Corey over here to this corner where we're working on another new addition to our offerings this year, which is going to be a mixed flat. So these taller seed flats here currently just have one species per, but we're actually going to mix and match these so you can purchase one whole tray and it'll contain a wide variety of species. So it's essentially a pre-made garden all in one, and kind of will take the guesswork out of it. So we'll target different themes, such as different groupings of plants based on your soil type and moisture requirements, as well as some monarch attractants again, or a hummingbird specific package, which should kind of take some of the guesswork out and allow you guys to just really hit the ground running with a wide variety of natives to bring in the wildlife. Very
cool. And Trenton wants to know, what's the funniest plant name in this greenhouse?
The funniest plant name? I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Let me rack my brain.
All right, we'll come back to that one. And Gabby wants to know what fertilizer we use.
So we do occasionally use fertilizer here in production when we're in pots. And it's just a liquid injected fertilizer that we'll just water in. However, one of the greatest advantages of native plants is actually when you have them at home in your yard, in the garden. They're actually accustomed to low, nutrient content. So one of the best perks of native plants is they're so low maintenance. You don't have to worry about watering so long as you plant them in the appropriate soil type. And you're not going to have to fertilize. In fact, fertilizing would actually, more often than not, encourage the weeds to grow particularly strongly, but the native plants don't actually require it.
And Tiffany, this greenhouse is actually located near the zoo's warehouse off of Spencer Street. It is not an exhibit open to the public at this time. Eventually, as we said, our goal is to open it up, and when the website launches on Friday, there will be a complete list of plants available with prices, and there will be pictures of most of the species too. And as Jake said, it has a really cool filter system on it, so you can check out, if you want a certain color of plant, you want a certain moisture level, sun level, all of those things, you can filter it out, and that will help get us through. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We appreciate you joining us and all of your questions about our greenhouse. As you can see, we're trying to move you around the zoo and make sure that we hit all aspects of things that we're doing. Today was our conservation department. Last week we were with the education department. We did a reptile, we did fish in the museum, we did 2 mammals. We're trying to spread it around, spread the wealth, and take as many requests as we can. We have a full schedule ready for you. Tune in each weekday at 10:30, and a special thank you to those of you who did take advantage of our donate button. We really appreciate it. We will keep that going. And again, we have fundraiser going on Facebook. You can always donate through our live feeds, or you can go to toledozoo.org/donate to help sustain your zoo during this difficult closure time. And just to remind you, education classes start on Thursday. If you're looking for a virtual classroom, go to toledozoo.org and check out our educational tools. And while you're there, you can also pick up a meal. We got meals to go on Tuesdays and Thursdays from our executive chef. This week we're doing enchiladas and pasta. Go online, toledozoo.org, place your order and pay for it. Then you can just drive by our Broadway entrance and pick it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.